And now, Detailing Success and PNS Double Black present the Renny Doyle Podcast, a podcast for blue-collar entrepreneurs. Hosted by the detailer of Air Force One and founder of both Detailing Success and the Detail Mafia, Renny Doyle. And now, here's Renny.
Where'd we go? Hold on. I'll fix this. Wait a minute. What the heck?
There he is.
There we go.
Can't hear him though.
I know. What happened? Everything was working. Oh, something funky's going on. Oh my goodness. Like nothing is. There's me. Holy cow. I haven't had this happen before.
There's Renny.
I know, but we lost his audio. I think the whole system's freaking out because it's not working for me like it usually does.
Well.
Oh, there he is. He's back.
There he is. I hear Renny.
Well, see, you did something. Push the right buttons.
Well, at least we got your audio. Now I got to figure out why we can't get all three of us on screen.
Well, you know what? We'll deal with that. A lot of people are going to be listening anyway, so
yeah.
Maybe not seeing us is a gift.
All right. Well, then the question is, which one of us do they get to look at the whole time?
Well, I think that you're just going to have to direct it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, hey, good morning, everybody. So this is a really cool episode. I've got a guest on that I'll take and introduce in a minute. But reacting versus responding, and we got some real bad background noise in one of us.
Yeah, is that Oscar?
I'm not sure.
Oscar.
Something's there. So we've got a really an interesting kind of podcast today where we're going to take and talk about reacting or being reactive versus responsive. And I've got a good friend of mine, Oscar Hernandez, U.S. Marine. Worked his way up through the Marine Corps career. So we're gonna talk about that from his perspective. I'll give a little bit of my input from my weekend warrior status and from 30 plus years of search and rescue and all of my stuff, being a deputy here in San Diego County and up in Idaho.
Oh, look, I fixed it. We're
gonna just talk about on that. So with that, good morning, Oscar. You want to introduce yourself real quick?
Good morning. How you doing, Chris, Renny?
Hey.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Oscar Hernandez, owner, operator, 805 Detail Shop, Buffershine West Coast sales rep right now, and pleasure to be here, guys. It's always fun to come on with you guys and talk.
Yeah, this could be fun. So we first before we go, did you guys listen to music this morning?
Just our little opening tune there. I haven't had any time to listen to music yet this morning.
Oscar, did you listen to music this morning?
Actually, I did. I was listening to some oldies.
What were you listening to?
Easy Like Sunday Morning.
Oh, there you go. I was listening to some original Zapp and Rogers. I listened to a little bit of Zapp and Rogers, and that took me down a kind of old school path too. It was pretty cool, and I love Zapp and Rogers. A lot of people probably don't even know who Zapp and Rogers is, but it's definitely, for me, it's mood music. So, you guys work out this morning?
Oh, I was just gonna say though, I thought for sure like your alarm clock goes off to the Rocky theme or something.
You know what? The Rocky music is one of my favorite. I have the soundtrack. I'm going to work out right when we're done today. I've got the gym set up, and I got to tell you, I listen to the soundtracks. You know, David Coggins. If you've listened to David Coggins at all, when he set his world record, he listened to Rocky the whole way through when he was doing it. So can't be that bad. Yeah, I was 10. I think I was 9. No, I was 9 when that movie came out, the original Rocky, and we thought it was so good as kids, we snuck back into the movie theater and watched it again that same day. We were running through the mall. It was back when movie theaters were at malls, and oh man, we went nuts as kids. So, yeah. Oscar, did you work out this morning?
I was just telling Chris when we got on here, I got up at 5:30. I just didn't quite get all the way up. So I'll be going after this here, and getting it in. But one thing I was telling him, I think I've been hitting it. I just had to give my body a rest this morning. I couldn't get it, at 5:30 in, but I'll definitely be going after this, or during lunch, during the lunch hours, usually slow at the gym. I don't have a gym here at home, so I kind of got to fix my schedule of when I can actually go into a gym and work out without having to wait for equipment, and it gets crazy out here in Southern California.
Man. Yeah, that's why I put the gym in here, is because you couldn't even. I mean, Rich's that own you guys. I mean, Rich's Mafia. You guys know him. He owns a gym, and he's come over here and worked out with me because his own gym gets too crazy, and he owns. So I mean, that's pretty nuts. And so let's jump into this. So Oscar, again, being reacting versus responding, or being reactive versus responsive. Let's go back and take you to, how old were you when you went into boot?
I was 18 years old.
So take us back, you didn't have what was your original vision when you went in the Marine Corps? What did you think you were going to do in the Marine Corps?
I went in prior to 9/11, so everything we weren't in any kind of conflict at the time. Honestly, when I went in, well, I'm not gonna lie, I was getting into a lot of trouble in high school. That's what kind of drove me to the military. Was I was into a lot of trouble. Got into some cases that I probably shouldn't have at that time when I was 17, and just I got faced with having a daughter at such a young age, and then having the military, and thank God I was already talking to a recruiter when all that went down, and he's the one that really woke me up, and I would never forget Staff Sergeant Aviles. I would never forget his name. He's the one that literally put that in front of me. Goes, hey, where do you want to go in life? Where do you want to end up? Do you want to keep doing this on the streets, or do you want to give your daughter a better life? And that's really what turned me to the military. So once that happened, I really just would hang out with the recruiters after school. I would go to the recruiting office, everything I could. I would just hang out with recruiters. I would also always working out. I was already a runner, but they got me working out. They got me, on the right track, and I would just hang out with the rest of the police. I started hanging out with people that I usually wouldn't hang out with at school, and that's just because we all had one common goal, and that was to become a United States Marine. But to go to the question was, I used to see these pamphlets that would, have at the recruiting station. They had this one guy in dress blues. And I always asked the question, why is that guy in dress blues and everybody else in the other uniform and the brown uniform? And they're like, well, that guy graduated number one. Like, that's number one. That's the guy. That's the platoon leader. And I'm like, oh, he's a recruit? He's like, yeah. And he was like, so I was like, that's what I'm going to do. So then he started teaching me drill. And that, so early on, I started setting goals for myself. I didn't know I was doing that at the time. And sure enough, when I went to boot camp, that was my goal, was to come out on top of my class. And I did it. I went out there and, 13 weeks in boot camp, I held that position and graduated in my dress blues and got meritorious PFC.
Wow. I had no idea. Congratulations.
Yeah, and then went to combat training and got meritorious Lance Corporal out of there. So it's been, it was definitely short-term goals at that time, but I knew what I wanted. And once once the Marine Corps got their hands on me, I just loved everything about it. I love the structure of it. I love being on a timeline and, learning backwards planning at an early time, and then while I was in boot camp and I graduated, I got to my first duty station, and that's instantly when I was like, I want to go back and be a drill instructor. Like, that's what I wanted to do in the Marine Corps, was to be a drill instructor. But when I came in legal admin, did that out there in Yuma, Arizona for a few years. And then my second duty station, I re-enlisted, and, you have these incentives. The Marine Corps is always trying to keep people in, so they'll give you incentives. So I said, either make me a drill instructor or I'm out. I kind of put that on the table. And, my career recruiter was able to get me those orders and send me off to MCRD San Diego. At the age of 20, I became a drill instructor.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to get an age waiver to become a drill instructor because I was so young.
Hey, you always hear these horror stories of boot camp. What was your best and worst story or experience during boot camp?
Oh man, you'll never forget. I mean, boot camp, it was drizzling in San Diego when I first got there. So getting off the bus was always, that experience. There's a lot of movies that try to reenact it, but getting off that bus, getting that speech when that drill instructor gets on, and it's a journey to get there. You spend about 3 or 4 days at your MEP stations, which, every major city has. When I was in LA, they put me on a little puddle jumper, short flight to San Diego. And next thing you know, I'm on that, we're hanging out in San Diego eating all this nasty food at the airport, the USO, until the bus shows up. And I think that's when it really hits you, because I did see a drill instructor, but he wasn't yelling. He just got us all on the bus, told us to put our head down. And it was probably about midnight when we rolled into MCRD San Diego, but we didn't know where we were going. We had our heads down. And then as soon as that light turns on, those drill instructors were on there. And the minute I came off the bus, I just face planted. I slipped on the ground and fell down, busted my lip, and it was game on from there. It was a blur, but it was fun. I mean, I liked it. Like I said, I was ready for it. I was physically fit. I was ready for those, at the time, the physical fitness test. But the yelling and the mental games that are on there, it's, some people don't agree with it, but they literally break you down. They break down all the bad habits, and then they just rebuild you. And I think that's what got to me the most, that I knew that was happening. I knew that was, we had to go through our phases. So it was good.
So as you're going through, I mean, you kind of knew what to expect. You're hanging out with the right crowds, and our as our oldest daughter and our son both are Marines also. And our daughter, like you, our son did too. He was proactive and involved. You guys would have, the Marine Corps would have all these, I can't remember what they call it, but they would have, runs and workouts and stuff like that. They take Marine candidates, recruits that they're hoping that they'll get in and work out with them. And I was taking our daughter up into the hills with packs, and then as she got stronger, I started exposing her to heights, ropes, kind of letting her get on the edge, let her get used to, being uncomfortable, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. So you go in there, you're probably, how many kids, what percentage when you get off that bus, and, a lot of people may not know you're standing on those footprints, right? How many of the kids were prepped for this? How many were just reacting versus responding? Even in the early, when you got off and you're standing on those footprints, were you responding or were you just reacting?
I think a little bit of both. But just, to answer the question of how many were ready, I would say only about 10% of us were actually mentally and physically ready. Everyone else was a culture shock. And, and that comes down to the recruiting and what they were told. I was in the recruit or the delayed entry program for a while. I had to get past my probation to get, out in town. I was on probation for a while. So I got to work with the recruiters a lot and got to understand the lingo, the drill, the physical fitness, the stories of hearing the new Marines come out of boot camp. They would take us down to MCRD and see their graduation. So I would pick all these new Marines that came out of boot camp and they were on 30 days leave. I'd pick their brains about boot camp, and learn as much. But there was kids in my platoon that literally had talked to a recruiter 4 or 5 days before they were in boot camp.
Whoa.
So they had no idea what they were getting into, other than, they got a job, they took a test, they're going to get paid, and whatever the recruiter told them, now they're there. But, getting off of that bus, the first week is pretty much admin week, but, you think you're not getting 8 hours of sleep, but you're getting those 8 hours. They just keep you up, tired. They wake you up at random times, because our day started a little, example, like we were going to medical probably 4 a.m. while everybody else was sleeping. The new recruits get in there first, get their shots, get all this other stuff, administrative work. And then, you do that for about 3 to 5 days, depending on when you got there. And then that first Friday is what it's called Black Friday. And that's when you actually meet your drill instructors. They break you into your platoons, you meet the drill instructors. And then you got, I think it was at the time was 3 or 4 days of intro days. And then training day 1 started Tuesday.
Wow.
And then that's when the actual 13 weeks starts. So it's a process just to get to meet the drill instructors and be in your platoon. But yeah, we lost recruits, day 1. They were just didn't want to be there, and then they fell back. And
how many of the total group finished?
Oh, my class, I think we were like in the 60s, But you drop some and you pick some up on the way up. That they got an awesome system of recycling there. Where if I were to get hurt, whatever week I get hurt, I would get sent back to a medical platoon. My training stops, but when I get better, they'll put me right back on that training week with a different platoon. So as we were dropping, we were also picking up recruits. So we were like in the 60s. But once I got up there to be a drill instructor after 9/11, I got there in 2005. January is when I went to drill instructor school. I had my hands on a first platoon by May. Because drill instructor school is another boot camp for us. Just you're a Marine now, but it's the same boot camp. I had to go through it all over again, the whole 13 weeks. But when I went through after 9/11, 2005, the middle of the war, the heat of the war, as we would call it, is we were getting up to 101 recruits, as much as we can fit in a squad base. What we were pushing through, 6 platoons, so over 600 recruits at one point my company had.
Wow. What was there something that you said to yourself when you said, okay, when I become a drill instructor, I'm never going to do this, but I'm going to make sure to do this?
Yeah, when I went through boot camp, I thought highly of my drill instructors. They never did anything to me or to anyone that I saw that wasn't justified, or what I'm saying. They got loud, they yelled at us, but it's the breakdown phase. And then they start to build you up. And then, we start to see other recruits throughout MCRD that uniforms look different than ours. But again, everything was a stepping stone to making you as, that Marine. That you just didn't show up and they gave you an Eagle Globe and Anchor and started calling you Marine. You were a recruit till you got that Eagle Globe and Anchor. We had to earn that. It wasn't given to us. So when I got to become a drill instructor, I literally just wanted to do what my drill instructors did and train me hard, train them hard, train them. We have a training schedule. It's no secret. There's a training schedule out there. Every day is the same for every company, but it's just give it your all. Having my drill instructors, one thing that I always noticed as the guide is I slept at the very top of the squad bay next to the drill instructor hut. Those guys were always there. That's one thing I noticed. 24/7, they were with us. Wow. I never seen them leave. And as a drill instructor, I figured out how they did it. But, as a recruit, they're just there 24/7. Someone is up 24 hours a day with you.
Wow. I had a couple similar, nothing like Marine Corps boot, nothing. I started out when I was 13. I was 13 was a big age because when I met my mentor, they got me into detailing and flying. But I also was kind of going down a wrong road, and they put me in a work camp. And I've shared this story several times. And the discipline there, they a lot of us just didn't. We come from families. I don't call it a broken family. We came from challenging families, and I was definitely one of those. And I don't you think like I gravitated towards the discipline, and the kids that didn't, like the kids that bucked it or thought they were really tough, they're the ones that paid the dearest. The ones that kind of like knew what the discipline meant. Does that make sense?
Like, oh yeah,
did better.
Yeah, as a drill instructor, we would seek out who was playing sports. We had history on you guys. The recruiter would send us a packet. We'd get all the paperwork. So while they're in receiving that first week, we're already back at work on Monday, also doing receiving week, and we're reviewing every single one of those recruits' paperwork. So we would already know who was just on paperwork, who was physically fit, who was doing the 20 pull-ups, 15 pull-ups, who was, a team captain on the soccer team or water polo or whatever sports they played. We already had that history. So we already had our eyes on who our physically fit guys were going to be. And on paper, we can already format what the platoon was going to look like as far as our guiding, our squad leaders, our leadership. Now, obviously, once they took the physical fitness test with us and it started, then it just came into the discipline. But, at first, it's you see who came from sports, and then we would see like the family history, single parents. That played a big role. Me, I was in the same situation as you were, Renny, where I was getting yelled at as a younger age. I grew up getting hit with the TV antenna, and that's just the way it was. Like it's just the way it was growing up in the 80s and 90s. We didn't have all of this stuff that we have now. So I grew up getting spanked. I stayed up after light. Once the street lights came on, I had to be home. And if I stayed out later than that, I knew I was coming home to ass whooping. Excuse my language.
I never experienced a TV antenna, but my mom went through her fair share of wooden spoons, and then also I do recall that they made a wooden paddle that they drilled holes in.
Yeah,
Catch more air.
yeah, yeah. I had one of those.
Catches more air on the way in.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Oscar. I don't know if you ever heard this story, but a Navy Seabee from World War II lived across the street from us, and I started to be a smart ass to my Italian grandma, and she's famous for trying to rip your ear off. But she sent me over to BJ, man, and he was a woodworker, and he built a paddle right in front of me one day, and he whacked me on the butt with that. And there's 3 times. The second time I went over there, he whacked me a few times on the butt with that. And the third time he looked at me and he goes over to his drill press and he says, this is going to be the last time I use this thing on you. And he drilled 3 big old fat holes to get more air through that paddle. And he was I got that paddle still. And he was right. He never touched me with that again because I became a milk and cookies kind of kid after that. Ass whooping, deserved ass whooping. And did it leave a mark? Yeah, it left a freaking, it left. I couldn't sit. Matter of fact, that night I couldn't even laying on my stomach to go to sleep hurt my butt. Blankets, sheets, I couldn't do anything for like 4 or 5 days. But you know what? Changed my life. And you know what he did right after that? You'll dig this. He took me through and started showing me his combat photos that were taken and what he experienced in the South Pacific. And you know what? And again, this is all right around the age 12, 13, 14. We're all critical years, for me. So let me ask you this. So how many of those did you start? You're a kid. Let's go back to your 18 before you're even a DI. These kids that just weren't prepared. Did you start seeing people going from being reactive to what the drill sergeants were doing to responding? Could you see other recruits that you're like, man, they're never going to make it, and all of a sudden they start reacting in the right way?
Yeah. They had different ways of, we come in as one team, one fight. We're one platoon. I was 3143 Mike Company. You never forget this type of stuff when you start talking about it. It just comes naturally. But yeah, the ones that weren't ready, you start looking to the right or to the left, and they start treating you and training you as a whole. So if one recruit messes up, we all pay for it. So eventually you're going to learn. You're going to learn, and one of the biggest things that they teach you is instant obedience to orders. It's when they say something, you react. There's no questioning. There's no why. There's no how come or I can't. Like it doesn't. No, it's you're doing. And they have ways of doing it. And honestly, pain retains. And when I say pain retains, it's not because we're getting beat. It's because we just do a lot of push-ups. And we will learn, by all working out together that we all have to think as one and act as one. So yeah, everyone becomes very responsive, very, very quick. And if you don't understand, or if you don't, understand what they're saying or what you're doing, you look to your right and to your left, and you'll be able to, you'll pick up quick. Drill instructors that by day one, they're losing their voice. And I got to see that as my drill instructors, their voice starts cracking. They're yelling, at 100 recruits going, full force for 3 or 4 days. They start coughing up blood. It gets really hard on the body. I didn't know this as a recruit because they can't show weakness. That's the other thing. They don't show this stuff. But when I became a drill instructor, I got to experience all that stuff, firsthand. So yeah, responsive. Everyone becomes very responsive very quick because you have no other choice but to respond to it. You have to act on it.
So let's jump forward. So you go through, and now you've got these young, recruits under your care. What was it like, the transition from going from student to instructor? What was that responsibility like? What was the emotions like? I've never gone through. I went through. Don't freaking make fun of me. ROTC, and then I had to go through basic walk, to become a warrant. We didn't have anything like you guys, but we did have a lot of stress. We had, there's a lot going on. A lot of people don't realize this. When you went to boot as a recruit, they're not just taking in. It's not just physical. You're learning a lot too, and as a DI, you're teaching a lot. how does that combination work? And where does that come back to, again, your goal when you're a DI is to build a Marine. Matter of fact, Paris Island, Chris put up a picture that when we went to our daughter's graduation at Paris Island as a Marine, it says we build Marines across the bridge, right? And I thought that was really an interesting way to look at it, is that you're building these young people up. What was that transition like for you?
It was pretty hard. Going just again, being a Marine, I was a sergeant at the time. And again, it goes down to these, the rank structure and the stepping stones. I was a sergeant at the time. I had my own platoon in Yuma, Arizona. I was already taking care of Marines and leading Marines. Then you go to DI school, and none of that matters because no matter what rank you go to, you are a DI student. So they break you down once again. You still have rank, and they respect the rank, and we respect the because some of these, I was an E5. There were staff sergeants and gunnery sergeants in my class that went later on in their career. Our instructors were staff sergeants and gunnery sergeants. So even though the rank was there, they break you down once again to make you that student because you want something that they have, and that's that campaign cover that they wear and the title of drill instructor. They broke us down for 13 weeks all over again, but they break you down and they teach you the do's and the don'ts. And it's mostly the don'ts. Don't touch a recruit. Don't do this, don't do that. But they're also teaching you a lot of safe. Like I took so much life-saving skills as a drill instructor student. It was crazy. Like the first class we had was on CPR, and everywhere we went, we had drills where they would attach someone on the shoulder, they would fall down, and three of us had to react right away and just be like, we go into mode of whoever catches them first, you're starting CPR. One's calling the ambulance, the other one's setting up road guard so we can start catching. So there's a routine that becomes, and they teach us that for a reason, because at any given point when you're entrusted to take care of these recruits, at any one point, one of them can go down, they can choke, they could, pass out, heat stroke, whatever it is. And you got to be able to take that cover off, put it aside, and react to a life-saving situation. Wow. I never had to put my hands on a recruit when it came to something like that. But while I was down there was a couple of drill instructors that had to, do CPR on some of these kids that go down. They just weren't ready. They just pass out, or, they're eating too fast. They start choking at the chow hall, and you just got to go into that, to that role. Because even though you're there making those Marines and you're that guy, the guy that's being mean and yelling and whatnot, you're also entrusted to their care. And at the end of the day, you have to take care of those recruits. You treat them like one of yours. It's just tough love.
Yeah.
But again, so going from a student to a drill instructor, I still had to go through it's a sign-off sheet. Even though I was a drill instructor wearing the belt, I was with the platoon, you still have to get signed off being in front of recruits by yourself. That was like a privilege to have the platoon by yourself because there was always 2 or 3. And if you don't get signed off, you're really just hurting your team because 13 weeks away, and a lot of people don't think about it, you're with these recruits for 13 weeks. These drill instructors have families. I went through a whole divorce as a drill instructor because I couldn't go home. She just didn't understand. She didn't understand why I was, a mile away from home, but wasn't able to come home every night. It's just what I got myself into, So if I don't get signed off, my drill instructors don't get to go home. That means,
wow.
But the minute I got signed off, they ghosted me for like 2 days. I had them Saturday and Sunday, all by myself. And it's like, I have a schedule. I knew what to do. But even as a new drill instructor, you had to go through those stepping stones to really get the title and have the privilege of being with them alone and taking care of, 60, 70, up to 101 kids all by yourself. And that's getting them up, getting them in the head, getting them dressed, getting them to the chow hall, getting them to the class. We have a schedule that has all this. We had to get signed off on every single little thing. Our morning routine, our evening routine, all the same. We all had to get signed off on that. So it was a very hard transition, very stressful. You get a lot of stress put on you. Drill instructor school, there was a couple times where I was like, this ain't for me. I wanted it, but it was just so stressful that I was like, I don't know if I can, but you look to your right, you look to your left, and you had, drill instructor students there with you. They're like, hey, we're all going in together. At one point or another, I know everyone thought about just quitting, but it's like what kept us pushing. And it's just that, that fire or someone else just pushing you to go through. And even as a drill instructor, you're not eating right. I think I was like 170 when I went to DI school. I graduated like at 145 after my first
Holy.
platoon. I wish I would have sent you guys pictures. After my first platoon, I was 129 pounds. After I graduated
Jeez.
my first platoon,
Yeah.
'cause I still have shirts that won't go up my wrist right here, but that was my arm up here.
Wow.
I'm about to take some uniforms up to Big Bear next time I go up there, because it literally was like I was a size 27 waist, just skin and bones. And again, because you're running around, you're yelling, you're not eating right. You don't really have a lot of time, and it's not that they're hazing us. It's just that 3 drill instructors for 101 recruits. You're always
It's a
on the
lot.
move. It's
a lot.
We take naps, cat naps. I can sleep anywhere now. You take 5-minute naps, 10-minute naps, 15-minute naps.
Hey, hold on. I'm going to disagree with that. Hold on. Leadership meeting.
Yeah.
We had a leadership course that we put on, and homeboy was sleeping in his hammock, and he had animals wandering around his camp that night. And I don't think you slept too good that night, Marine.
Hey, well, I could have sworn there was something breathing right next to my head. I just didn't want to move.
Yeah, it was Bambi.
I saw the duck on here, and I know he heard it. He just didn't want to move either. But
Both you guys. I don't think either one of you slept very good. So hey, we're going to flip this over to business here in a second. Before we do that, Chris, look up. We had that Google's answer to reacting versus instinctive. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask a couple more questions.
I got it when you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead. Read that real quick.
Well, so reacting versus responding. Reacting is instinctive. It's an instinctive emotional response to a situation. It's often impulsive and can be influenced by our past experiences or fears. On the other hand, responding is a thoughtful and deliberate action. It involves considering the situation, weighing the options, and making a conscious decision, right? So, that makes a lot of sense, right?
Totally.
It's when you react to things, right, you're feeling threatened, triggered, maybe. It leads you to say things you might regret. It's saying things off the cuff, whether you're yelling at your kids or fighting with your wife or whatever it is, right? You say things that you probably really don't mean, especially if you gave it some real thought, versus responding is more deliberate, right? You take the time to assess the situation, consider your options, and choose the best course of action, or the best course of action. So, it's one of the things that, when I was diving into this, was that I liked how, when you take the time to respond, it helps you make more thoughtful and intentional and calculated choices. It also helps you build stronger relationships, create a more positive and productive environment. Well,
and I'm going to own this when it comes to like being in the field and responding to really bad situations. Having to take and draw down on somebody, all those responsive. I train myself pretty well to do those things in business. Same thing, but when it became time to be a husband and a father, I reacted a lot more than responding. And I've gotten better, but I'm still not very, talented when it comes to empathy with, my wife and my kids. I love to blame it on the way I grew up. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just an asshole. But it's funny because under pressure items, I'm a lot better at responding. When it comes to some of the emotional side of things, of figuring out my wife and my kids, it was a lot more reactive responses than solid responding. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And I actually kind of have a theory on that. And I think I'm kind of right, to be honest. But my theory is that, we'll react to people that we love, like our wives and our kids and all that, because we're not too concerned about how do I put this? We're not too concerned about how they're going to respond or react, right? I mean, they're still going to be our wife, they're still going to be our kid. But in business, if you react to somebody or something in a negative way or the way you shouldn't, you risk losing that relationship immediately, right? Or that opportunity immediately. So there's a little bit more. Our brains think there's more cost involved. There's more at risk there.
Boy, you know what? That makes total sense, and it's kind of screwed up.
It is.
It makes total sense.
It's 100% screwed up that we're treating the people that are actually by our sides the most, the worst, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that we get comfortable, and therefore we start to behave that way.
Wow. So, Oscar, I'm looking at that. We're going to jump down and through and just ask you kind of rapid fire and go through some things, all of us. But that family day, with Nick Marines and seeing our daughter and all these young Marines that had just gone through a living hell. How many hours is that last proctor before they're actually a Marine? How long does that last?
You're talking about the Crucible?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about 96 hours total from start to finish. They get 3 MREs, so only 3 meals for it. And there's about 40. When I was going through there, was about 42, 43 different obstacles with only 4 hours of sleep at night. So they're on their feet, they're hiking, they're tired. But, we take them through that fog of war and stress them out to make sure that they can still react and respond to certain situations, no matter how tired and how hungry you are. They have to show that they're responding and reacting to everything that we have them. So yeah, the Crucible is and the schedule has changed for a while. When I went through, we did the Crucible the week before, and then we got our Eagle Open Anchor a week later, right on Family Day in front of our families. When I became a drill instructor, we went through some phases where they were getting the Eagle Open Anchor after the Crucible. So it just not in front of their families. So it's changed, but yeah, that Crucible is pretty much what from day one, what we're building you up for is that Crucible.
Well, it was amazing to see these young people, especially our daughter. We looked at everybody. It was, if you've never gone, and I've gone to all, we've got a daughter that's Air Force, 2 Marines, and then our youngest is undecided. Gone to a lot of National Guard, event, but if you've never seen or witnessed a Marine Corps graduation or family day when they do the run, I want to tell you, I looked at every kid coming through there, but there was really one that I honed in on, and it was our daughter. These young Marines, you could see they'd just gone through hell, but 90% of them, you couldn't tell because they were so damn happy and proud. They were probably the weakest they've been. Matter of fact, it was funny when our daughter came home, she had leave and then she had to go to Stumps. She was so regimented with the way she even picked up a cup and set it down. And that just wasn't our daughter before that time. She's always been very, very systematic. She's a very dedicated human, but it was funny just to watch just how mechanical she had become. Does that make sense?
It's all uniformed. The way you eat, the way you sit, the way you talk, the way you walk, the way you march, everything is got to be the same. Again, it's one unit. How we train them, and it all comes down. We teach that through drill, close order drill, marching. Mm-hmm. That's where you really get the instant obedience to orders. And then everything else just becomes so repetitive that's what you do, down to the way that, right now we have the luxury of getting up and, getting dressed, we do whatever we want. In recruit training, everything is scheduled and everything's on point, and you do the same thing every morning in your morning routine. You get up, port side gets in ahead, starboard side, we start getting dressed. When we get them dressed by the numbers. That's, your left sock, get in on your left hand, left sock, get on your left foot, right sock, get in your right hand, right sock, get on your right foot. Everything is by the numbers, and we dress you by the numbers. And there's a reason for that, because when it comes to the Crucible and you've been up for 72 hours, with only 8 hours of sleep at that point, and we got to get up at 4 a.m. and we start getting out of there by 4:30, and that's getting you up, cleaning up the big website, packing all your pack, eating breakfast, all in less than 30 minutes. All that pays off because they're on autopilot at that point. When we're getting them up and get dressed. They know exactly how to get dressed. Everything is a routine, and we train them that way for a reason.
So, we're going to bring it around to business, but I'll tell you, to this day, it's anybody in my family will tell you, I still do not sit down to put my socks, boots, or shoes on.
It's a hard habit to break, isn't it?
Yeah, I cannot sit. I mean, I'm so systematic, and I had to go through some mid-grade warrant officer training. 2 years ago, I think I went to that, Chris, right? It was like 2 weeks. And it's nothing like what Oscar's talking about. But when you're a weekend warrior and you haven't done that stuff in a while, and all the NCOs come in, we lose our rank. The NCOs are our bosses, and I knew every single one of them. And it's a reminder of discipline, because it's the same thing in business. Is that, I have a thing that I'm going to talk to the Mafia about today called rolling goals. Rolling goals is that when you become set, okay, so you had a couple years of being a Marine before you go to DI school, right? But I guarantee you there was disciplines that you hadn't used since you were in boot. And
it happens.
Right.
I mean, I was living out in town. I wasn't living on a base. I wasn't used to reveille and, colors and taps. And, by the time colors came down, I hadn't been in colors and evening colors where the whole base just freezes. And then you face the flag or the music and you salute for colors. Yeah. I hadn't been around that in years because I was already home having dinner at that time. There's a lot of stuff. So with even breaking those habits, going back into DI school, that was the hard part. Living in the barracks with a roommate, getting 20 minutes to eat, getting 10 minutes to shower and get dressed and right back outside. Those things is you lose that luxury. But again, it just builds that discipline, and tying it into business. When I got out and got into the detailing industry and went up to your training, and, when I first got into my shop, all of that discipline it was so easy for me to transition into business. And I remember, earlier days in my shop, the first thing I would do is I would get into my shop. I had to be there by 7:30. Whether I had a vehicle or not coming in, I had to be there by 7:30. And the first thing I would do is I would check the forum, because we didn't have the Facebook page yet. I would literally go through the forum and read the posts for the last day. And that was literally my daily routine. While I was reading the forum, my coffee was going. Then I had my coffee. Then by 8 o'clock, it was like I had to either start working on a vehicle or I had a customer coming in at 8 o'clock. But I had those first 30 minutes to myself in my shop to get stuff, to get myself ready for that vehicle. And if I didn't have a vehicle, I was either going to a networking meeting or I was just going to go and scout and start, passing out business cards or whatnot. So all of these disciplines that I learned through the military, I was able to adjust into business and put into my business, and really just make it down to like every evening with shop cleanup. I never went home unless the shop was clean. Everything was put away, everything was organized, swept, mopped. Like that was pretty much my routine. And obviously as you start in the years into a shop or into a business, some things do slack, some things don't. But to this day, if I leave the shop and I leave chemicals out or I leave bottles out, I'm thinking about it the whole night. Like, man,
it bothers you, right?
Could I have taken an extra 30 seconds to put that away?
Yep.
It's like, so yeah, go ahead.
Last week I had a tough couple days. Last week was just a busy week, but I just had it was just, I don't know, man. I got my head in the wrong spot, so Monday, when I woke up Monday this week, I've got a book that I don't look at too often of different missions and stuff I've gone on. And it's got some grim realities of some stuff we've gone on, people I've lost. I opened that up for the first time in a while because I had to remind myself that what I do for business, for a paycheck, people don't die. I'm not going to get killed. I'm not on that mission. And basically, what the hell am I? Why did I allow my mind to go there?
Yeah.
And that's a discipline. And it kind of kind of woke me up. I was kind of being a little baby.
We've had this conversation. Remember when I think I was up in Big Bird one time, and I was like, "No one's shooting at me. Ain't nobody trying to kill me right now." That's
Right.
literally what I. That's literally what I fall back to. I take myself to my Afghanistan days, where it's like that's really where stuff was crazy, and it's like it was life or death situations. But the stuff that we're dealing here on a day to day basis in business shouldn't get you that stressed out. Because I mean, in my mindset, because I've been through it, I literally put myself to that. No one taking shots at me right here. I don't got to worry about RPGs coming in behind me or loud booms or something coming through. Like, and I check myself and I reset myself that way. Where it's like I've been in worse situations. I've been stressed out a lot more. I've been through a lot mentally and physically that this business, it should not be stressing you out that much. This work should not be stressing you out that much.
No. Yeah. We got a saying, train like you fight and fight like you train. We, for about 10 years ago, up until about 5 years ago, is that I was doing a lot of op4 missions, opposition forces missions with guard and regular army units that were shipping out. And I was always asking them why they brought us in. And it was pretty cool. And they said, well, you know what? You're kind of like the insurgents that we fight where we fight. Is you know what you're doing. You're trained, but you're not trained at our level. But you're trained enough in combat that it really screws us up. We're not going against just weak opponents. We're going through somebody that's a decent tactical warrior, just enough that could kill us. And I like that answer. So when our team went out and we trained these teams that are going into, into theater, it was like the guy that you played football with that was just didn't know how to stop. We didn't know how to, we trained like we fought. We fought like we trained. And the last, it was the 220, I think it was the 229th that went out. They had KIAs and they came home and they had no KIAs. Not a one. And it wasn't that weren't going into danger zones. I like to believe that we helped prepare them at another level because they hadn't gone against anybody like us before that in their readiness drills. And so entrepreneur, why I mentioned that is that I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't drill for the real thing, man. Is that they don't train for the real thing. Is it's everything's is an emotional response, and that's dangerous. So take us through now is going to theater. You talked about that. So first shots fired. You'd been a Marine for how long by the time you went to Afghanistan?
A little bit under a decade before I got my hands on that.
Wow.
Because when everything kicked off, I was in Yuma with a Harrier squadron. So I was, we went out, but it was more on battleships where I was at. So I never got to see theater there. But then I went to drone instructor school. It's obviously non-deployable. Then I went to a unit up in Rochester, New York, anti-terrorism battalion, which was infantry, but they were reserves. So we were training the reserve component. And then once I was able to maneuver my way out of there in 24 months and get me to a deployable unit to deploy, and that's when I went in. And yeah, it's a scary feeling. It's knowing at any point, like, being up, I mean, you see me react and respond to the flycatchers you have up there.
Yep.
Like that has a very distinct sound, like a sniper shot, like it's just popping behind your ear. Yep. Like, and it's mind-boggling at times when certain things happen, and it just, you can prepare. We did a lot of training, but once boots are on the ground, it's a whole different story out there. It's you better be ready, and everyone just, one team, one fight is pretty much where I can see it. You got to look out and trust, the Marine to the right or to the left of you to make sure that everything is, they have your back and you have theirs.
It's funny because when I go to dinner, there's only about a half dozen people in the world that I will allow to sit where they've got a better vision of the establishment than I do, and Oscar's one of them. I will gladly take and put my back to the door if Oscar's with us and he's got the good seat. Why is that, Oscar?
Got your six. You got to check your six, Yeah,
I
check
know
your
that you've
six.
got the vision, and I can see you're the same way. When I walk into a building I've never been into, I'm looking on how to get if shit goes bad, how to get out. Everybody's, oh, I'm looking at how to take them down. I'm looking at how to get my wife out of there, and then as many people as I can, and if need be, go after the bad dude. But in the first place is that if I'm flying somewhere, I don't have a weapon. You got to realize that. But I'm the same way with Diane. Diane's got really good eyes. I know that with you, James Gloria, our first sergeant, James, 20 plus years, Air Force, did some pretty cool SF stuff, is that I know for a second that he's going to get us out of that. Man, I know he's got my back. I can have my eyes closed and I'm good. I know Diane's facial reactions. So I know she's going to give me a hint that something bad's going on. I know Oscar's the same way as James. His shit's going to go down, and we're going to tear people apart by our bare hands if we have to. If things, but that trust is also mafia. I'm going to mention that. And this is kind of even in our own group or even in the industry, you got to realize when you come in, everybody will say there's cliques. I was in every, if you want to call it a clique, I was in every clique in high school. I knew the stoners. I knew the gangbangers. I knew the athletes. I knew the band. I knew the nerds. I knew the performing arts. I put myself in all those groups. If you want to call it a clique, then I was in every single clique there was. I don't call it cliques. I call it relationships. People have taken the time. And like in our group, there's members. I mean, we go back. I mean, Doug Cunningham, Doug Parfett, Matt Williams, all these. It's been almost 20 years. You're not going to take and like when I go I was at base this weekend, I got to go back on Saturday, is that there's tables I'm invited to and there's tables I'm not invited to in the military. Does that make sense, Oscar? And how would you explain that?
The Navy has a very unique rank structure. Once you make it up to E6, but once you become a chief, you have the chief's mess. That's E7, E8, E9. I made it up to E8 in the Marine Corps as a first sergeant. Even as an E8, I couldn't get into that chief's mess because I hadn't gone through the chief initiation process. And I was invited at one point. I actually got to participate in Rochester, New York as training them. And then when I got here to Port Hueneme in Oxnard, I got to participate in, the process of overseeing their training and got to PT with them a lot. And that's when they really invited me into that chief's mess. But that's pretty much how it's like a I don't want to put this because it is the pride of belonging into that, but it's just like the rite of passage. Like you've made it to this certain point. Now you get to join us in this, in this mess hall or that mess hall. And it's not that they're mistreating it, but it's the way that I saw it. Again, it's those stepping stones. It's that roadmap. How do I make it to that rank? The military, we have our non-NCOs, we have our NCOs, which is a corporal and a sergeant, but then you have your staff NCOs. And I always remind people this when, I kind of get that thing of like, well, I'm a business, I got to do this. And like, there's no sense of entitlement. When I made it to sergeant, I felt proud. And yeah, I was a sergeant, I was an E5, but guess what? Now I was just the new sergeant. There were senior sergeants up there that had been sergeants for 3 or 4 years. They had more experience than me in that rank. Same thing when I made it to staff sergeant. Yeah, I was happy to make it to the staff NCO, but I was just the boot staff sergeant at that point. Even when I became a first sergeant and got my first company, I was a company first sergeant, but I was the new company first sergeant. There were first sergeants that had 3, 4, 5 years of experience as a first sergeant that I was still looking up to. So just because you've made it there didn't mean that I wanted to stop. It was literally continuing to get that knowledge and, get that experience underneath my belt to continue to move on forward. So it's just like a rite of passage, when you have those and when you're talking about, being in these groups and whatnot, I think it's the same thing. They got to be able to accept you and prove yourself in the groups and, what you guys got going on. Cause it's not cliques. I don't consider them cliques. Everyone's got a structure. And that's what it comes down to is being structured.
Yeah. It's funny because it's with the guard, and I want to go into this, is you said, you're going through your drill instructor training and man, you really wanted to quit. A lot of people don't know the difference that just rest, learn to rest. is even when like last week, man, I just had a couple tough days, and you know what really fixed it was me resting. I took a break. On Sunday I turned my damn phone off. I just turned it off. Didn't look at it. I did something I usually never do. I sat down and I watched a couple of TV shows, watched a couple of movies. I just don't do that. But you know what? That rest, that mental rest from everything worked. I came into Monday with a whole new attitude, and it was much needed. So the other thing is, okay, so our daughter, when she's Marine, when she came back from Okinawa, she was put in, she was an NCO over a reserve unit. She calls me up. She goes, Dad, I have no idea what I'm getting into, with these reserves. And I said, well, I ran her through my thoughts, and there's a reason why, because in business, especially in the blue collar industries like detailing, we got a lot of part-timers. We got people that are building their dream up. They got jobs that maybe they don't like. Maybe they're young and they just don't want a boss, but they're part-time. It's kind of like the reserve status in the military. So I told my daughter, I said, listen, they love to be in uniform. And I said, us weekend warriors, we love to be in uniform, but you got to remember, you got to be patient, is that we don't put the uniform on as often as you. We're working a full-time job aside from this. We're going to come in maybe a little flustered because we're trying to get everything at our full-time job and with our families situated before we show up for our drill weekends. And we're not going to be kind of as orderly. We're not going to, and sometimes we're a little gung-ho. We're a little too
motivated.
Too motivated. We're a little bit too, I mean, it just goes too far. So you go into a reserve unit. What did you witness, and how could you relate that back to what we see in business with people that are building their business up while they've got a full-time or part-time gig?
I had it hard. I went from being a drill instructor one Friday to 2 weeks later, I was checking into a reserve unit. So I went from the most structured and disciplined place in the Marine Corps to the most relaxed place in the Marine Corps, which, at the time I didn't understand the difference. They're civilians, but we're part-time. Like I wanted everything to be covered in the line. And it was just such a relaxed environment that my first sergeant was always on me about, getting on the reserves and being too hard, because I can get someone to tap out pretty quick, just constantly ride on them. And I see Jason Bruno's comments on there. We could chat about this next time I see you, brother. But yeah, so I mean, it was definitely a transition. But as I got into the units and got to see, my respect for the reserve component became actually very high, because these are guys and girls that come in, they have full-time jobs in corporate America. They still take the time to put on the uniform, come in and train with us. And then when we're sending them home, at 16, 18, 1900 on a Sunday night, which is 7, 8 o'clock at night, they still got to go into corporate America on Monday morning, go right back to work, and that's when I really started seeing it. So it used to get underneath my skin when the reserves wouldn't respond to me throughout the month. But again, they're volunteering hours throughout the month just to get the mission done. And that's more on the leadership. And Renny, you can relate to this in your position, where you put in a lot of hours you ain't getting paid for as a reservist throughout the month to get things done for the following. Because on the active duty side, we had 5, 7, Marines taking care of the whole unit. So my respect started being out there towards the reserves. At first I hated it, but after a while I started to appreciate it, and we started to take more pride in our work and getting more things done. But it definitely coming into business, I think I saw it yesterday. Someone posted on Facebook. There's a detailer, and then there's a business owner who runs a detail shop, and I think that's a pretty good way of seeing it. You have the business side, and then you have the technician side of it. And some of us are doing it both. Some of us are doing that and have a full-time job and go to school. I know Jason Bruno. I see his stuff here. He's going to school. He's seeing it right now where he's running a business and in the business mindset, but going to school. I had that same struggle when I got out. Going to college at 38 with these kids, it drove me crazy, but it's like you have to be able to separate it. And then us from the outside looking in also have to be able to respect it. And don't compare ourselves to one another, stop comparing each other to one another, because what Chris Woman has going on in his business is different from your business, is different from my business. We can all be sitting here talking about it, but I can't be like, well, Chris has this and he has that. How come I don't have it? Well, because he has a different business plan, or why do I have something, or how come Renny has this? We can't be like that when it comes to the business and the detailing industry, because we're all fighting different battles. We're all in different situations, across the board. So I see some guys detailing on Saturdays and Sundays. And I remember when, I think you told me when I first went to training, when I was like, if you ain't detailing 7 days a week, you're wrong. If you ain't detailing, you're not making it. And you're like, no, you're not making it. But I see these guys doing it now. I can't tell them the same, because these guys that are detailing Saturdays and Sundays have full-time jobs. They have a whole career Monday through Friday. And we can't just go out there and start bashing people because they're detailing on Sundays or detailing on Saturdays, or, Saturday nights. I see it. They're posting on their stories. We don't know their background,
Say Bobby is a full-time cop, one of the top levels in his department. And I don't know, it was 5 or 7 years that he did that. So here he is performing at the highest level in his professional career, but building up his business on the side. So when when he retired out as a cop, he has a ready-made business, and he did it. And man, I can't tell you again how many weekends and nights. I mean, he came in, he has a serious business, and I had to be careful, because it's the reverse of what I do with the Cal Guard, is that Bobby was working full-time and building a business part-time. I am running a business full-time and then do my weekend service, and so we got to be careful but at some point, when you transition, now Bobby, once he transitioned over, he managed his time, and he valued his time. And I think that's really important. A lot of people don't, do. So let me ask you this. Marines, under fire. So when you get into Afghanistan, how did all that preparatory work out? Was it instant? You just knew it, or did it take a little bit of an adjustment period?
There's definitely, I had a very unique situation. I worked on the command deck with the top level guys of the unit. So what we were supposed to spend a week in a bigger base, I spent a whole 24 hours, and my sergeant major walked in, and like at 4 a.m, he kicked my sleeping bag, goes, "Get up, we're going in," like we're taking off, and we took off. I didn't get to have that whole week of prep. I went straight into the zone where we were supposed to be at, into they call it a FOB, forward observing base. We got right into it and started turning over. They call it RIP. We started ripping with the company going out, and just started, straight to it. You have time to sit there and think about it, but you go straight into reacting. You got to go in there, and you got to know what you're doing, and so you don't really have time to sit there and be like, well, do I want to do this? Do I not? It's pick up and go. When you're in that situation, you can train for a lot of stuff in different scenarios, but when you're in it, there is that fear of the what if. You start hearing the loud booms, you start hearing things flying towards your head, and just little zips, just go, or you start seeing the building getting hit with rounds. They got brave out there a couple times, but it's just unless you've experienced it and been there, it's kind of hard to talk about, because put me in the ground right now, and it just instantly changes, and you can instantly just go into that react mode and flip a switch, and then you're in that position where you can react to anything that comes your way at that point.
Well, and it's the training part that's key, right? It's the training that has taken what's going to be a reaction, right? It's going to be a reaction no matter what. But now you've taken this reaction, and you've made it so that your reaction is still a calculated response, right? Through the training.
Yeah, and then some of the responses that we have, we don't have 5 minutes to plan make a plan and all that. It's literally seconds of life or death situations, of how you're going to react to something. I saw a lot of stuff. Something comes to our fob, but you just hear a loud bang, and yeah, your natural instinct is to buckle, but you buckle for a second, and then you're taking off. You're on the move. You don't have that time to sit there and and a couple people react differently. The junior Marines that weren't used to that, and just coming in, the majority of the people that were deployed at the time when I was out there, they were literally 25, 18 years to 25 years old. They didn't have that life experience. They didn't have all that. That's all they knew. and it's so reacting is something that you did within a second or two. It's like, yeah, you buckle, you hear it, your ears ring for a little bit, and then boom, you're on the move. The dust clears and you're going.
I can't tell who this is, but they said with great training, the reaction becomes a conditioned response.
Yeah, it just comes to second nature.
Absolutely.
Well, I walked into a restaurant with all you guys and Diane. I don't know if you remember that, Renny. We were up in Big Bear.
Yep.
Me and Diane walked in, and the way that you guys sat down, I just cringed. But it was like I looked at Diane looked at me. We took a deep breath, and I was like, "You good?" And she's like, "Are you?" I was like, "As long as you got me," because my back was towards that door. But she was like, "I'm not going to take that seat."
Yeah.
Jason Bruno, you're just muscle memory. That's a thing right there. And again, it comes down to instant obedience to orders, which we get it into by the drills that we did in the Marine Corps, and the training is just constantly just training and training and training in the dark, training in the rain. It just, everything has to function the same.
Absolutely.
And it just, it becomes second nature. And I think if you get into the business side and you start doing practices and you train like you're going to conduct business and, put yourself in those situations, you're only going to get better. So you're going to train yourself. Had a conversation this weekend about public speaking. Some people are like, how can you get up there and just talk to 50 people without, it gets nerve-wracking, but when you do it so much and you're constantly training to do public speaking, it becomes second nature. It doesn't even phase you if there's 5 people in the room or 5,000 people in the room. At the end of the day, you're there to do something. So we do it, and
it's people ask me that all the time. Is it natural for you? And I'll say, no, man, I was a special ed kid. I spent 3 years when the teacher would have me stand up and answer a question. I didn't know what the answer was. Just getting ridiculed by the other kids, and so the last thing I ever wanted to do was stand up. But now it's, you could give me a subject, something that I don't even know about. It's planting a rose garden. Give me 5 minutes to read up on rose garden development, and I'll speak about it. It's because A, I take a deep breath, and B, I just do it. You just got to do it. And it's like going off the side. We had the leadership course, and we had the exit out was a 3-story rock. We came off of that. We repelled off of it. And for me, it was that first time over. And Oscar will say this too. When if you haven't been on on the wall for a bit, that first time you go over it, it is nerve wracking. It's like coming out of a helicopter when you haven't when you haven't done it in a bit. It's a little nerve wracking, right? But when you do it all the time, do you even think about it?
No, when I was going through Hearstmaster school, I told you, like, we had to rappel 60 times before we secured for the day. We were pretty much done at 1 o'clock, 1300, doing all our knots and everything. It was a 3-week course that I went through, but then they were like, hey, 60 jumps before you go home. That's 60 times up that tower. It just became just repetitive, Jason Bruno again hit it right on, repetition. It just becomes repetition when you get up there, belay, belay, you go out there, you drop. But when I was up there at the leadership course, Carlos from Uber Detail pulled me aside. He goes, man, how'd you do it? Like, you didn't show no fear. Again, a lot of it is like, was I scared going down? Yeah. But you don't show fear. You don't show weakness. You don't show it. And again, it's that trigger that you can just put on, and it's not putting on a show. It's literally, if you show fear, you show weakness, you're already telling yourself that you can't do it.
My helmet, I've got a patch on my helmet. I can't wait to see if I just got moved to another unit. And I can't wait to see if they'll let me. I put it back on this last weekend, and it says, "Stop screaming, I'm scared too." But it's true. But no, it's right. And Jason, we got to get you on here too, and kind of do the same thing. And so taking this back to business, and then we'll wrap up. We're going a little long, but this is great. This is exactly what I wanted this, Oscar, is, to talk about stress. Okay. So fear, managing fear. Fear is one of the most amazing emotions, because fear can do both. It can save you or it can kill you. And so, you're in Afghanistan. How'd you cope with there's fear going on, right? But were you prepared for that fear?
we would like to think going into that we are, going into is a long flight out there, talking to the Marines to the left and to the right of us in the plane, there's always that what if, but there's a point on that flight where they dim the lights. And I just remember sitting back and just looking and being like, some of us ain't coming back. Like,
Oh man.
And that is a fear, that is a fear, is that looking to that plane and saying, some of us are that's just what it comes down to, and once you get there, we don't think about it. You're just, reacting. But yeah, we took some KIAs out there and, a lot of wounded. But that we were just prepared for that. And again, we train ourselves for that. We train ourselves going into it to handle that, to handle that stress, to deal with it, to handle it. And you can train when it comes to something like that, but until you're actually doing it, that's when you're going to know that training is going to kick in or it's not going to kick in. We can train all day. We can train all day for, going into the water, water survival training and all that, but it's how you react when you get pulled down. And, does your muscle memory kick in on how to get out of a chokehold when you're getting choked underwater? There's certain pressure points you got to hit. Do you automatically know how to react? Do you know how to react, to an active shooter? You can train for an active shooter situation all day, but do you know how to react when your back is towards the door? There's got to be certain things. And that's why when I walk into rooms, I'm scanning all the time. And, how it is. I'm sure Jason,
nothing like you guys do. And I hope I never have
and it's
to.
like, it's just every situation. And, when I first came out, I think I've mellowed down a little bit, but it's never going to go. I don't think it's ever going to go away because I constantly practice it. It's constantly in the back of my mind. Like, it's just something that you learn and you can't let go. But, bringing it into the business side, I think that's why I don't let things stress me out on the business side of the house, because there's nothing as stressing as that. We're not getting calls about that right now. We're not, it's the calls we're getting are not about life or death situations,
Chris even had a talk with me a few weeks ago, and Diane mentioned it, is that, I left the local search and rescue team a few years ago to be the OIC, the officer in charge of ground rescue training and certifications for the entire state. It was a huge undertaking. In normal military and government fashion, the economies, they just slashed the whole program. It's gone. I mean, 10 years in the making, over 10 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars, thousands and thousands of hours, and at a strike of a pen of somebody that knows nothing about it, it's gone. And I don't have that now in this new unit. I'm not going to have that adrenaline rush, and I'm not going to have that sense of giving back. And so, I rejoined the team here, both on the ground and the mounted unit, because I realized very quickly when Chris said that, I'd really like to see you rejoin, locally. He said that, and I told Diane, and she goes, you're going to go stir crazy, if you don't have that. And you got to have something in your life that allows you that escape. And I think, the hardships of others, it's a burden, when we go out on missions, but on the same token is we're bringing, even in the worst situations, we're bringing family members home to families that may not have been brought home, or maybe they wouldn't have been found for a while. And there's that added stress. So it's kind of interesting. So Chris, before we get out of here, you got any closing questions, comments?
Well, what you just said, right? You're bringing closure, no matter whether it's positive or negative. You're bringing closure, and that's the important part, right?
Yeah. There was a time when because I was, reserve deputy. I was a level 3, which means that, I had to partner up. I had to be with a full-time deputy when I went out on patrol. Larry was my partner probably 80% of the time here in California. And, up in Idaho, I was on an apprehension team. We'd go after people in the wilderness. I've done a little bit of that here too. I always have respected law enforcement and military, and that's why I went reserve status. Growing up in a tough town, it's real easy for people to throw stones at cops. Well, why don't you go become a reserve and be a good cop? I mean, matter of fact, even at this age, it's funny, the state of the world that we live in is I decided, okay, I'm going to go back and get my reserve back. I'm going to get my badge back. I'm going to go do some good things. And a good friend of mine, his family's legendary here in San Bernardino County. And San Bernardino County, if you don't know, is the largest county in the country. Really good sheriff's department, great family environment. I'm on their search and rescue team. But I decided to go back, put my money where my mouth was, and become a reserve again. And he came rolling up and he's like, dude, you can't do it. I'm like, what do you mean I can't do it? And I said, I thought he was talking about because I'm getting to the age. And he goes, no. Liabilities. He says, and he starts telling me some of the things that cops are liable now for. That's insane to me. And he's right. I can't risk what I've built to go help others. How sad is that? And so, it's just one of those things. So Oscar, coming back, let's close it out, is that, business, we've talked about your military career, but I think the reason why you came out, you're very systematic. You joined the chamber, you changed the chamber. You did things locally. When the shutdown happened, you went right back to your roots of volunteering, because even though you had a career in the military, it's a volunteer military. You're enlisted, right? And so how did all this help you in business, and what advice would you give somebody that's listening right now? Maybe if they're struggling a little bit or they want to get to the next level, what would you say to them?
I feel that business is all about relationships. I've always had a saying, people got to know you, they got to like you, and they got to trust you. And that's when you're going to get their business. Is build the relationships. When you see people, don't see them as they're just going to give you money and they're going to make you rich. One of the biggest things that I see is, this guy's got a Lamborghini, so I'm going to charge him extra. No, treat him the same. Treat everyone the same. Build the relationships. Just 2 weeks ago, I was at a car show here in Ventura. They have the Best of the West, and one of my clients came out, and he is a good client. Renny, you know who he is. He came out from the Beverly Hills area, and I don't know who told me where he talks to me, he texts me, we talk about cars, and I told him about the car show. He goes, "Oh, I just want to go hang out." He literally came out and hung out with me, and someone said he just wanted to be human. He just wanted to be
normal,
who he was with you, hanging out at a car show, talking cars. And I don't think we would have been able to get that if I treated him based as a price tag on all the vehicles he has or he's brought me. And it's just build the relationships. It takes time. Be patient with it. But what Renny said, if you're not into the volunteering and and giving back, that's really what took my business off to the next level, is the pandemic. I took the pandemic and I started volunteering in my food bank. Then they trusted me to do all the operations for all the food banks within my county. I was doing seven food banks a week. 7 days a week I was working straight, whether it was 2 hours or 8 hours. And that whole time, while everybody was shut down, and I wouldn't say complaining, but businesses were shut down, I was out there meeting people that wanted to volunteer too, and those people became my friends, and then they became clients. Now, I've had someone tell me, "Well, you only volunteer to get clients." Well, yeah, there's always the business side of it, right? But not every person that I came across is my client. Some of them literally became my friends. And, we still do things together. We still help each other out in the community. They still ask me for advice when it comes to events. So, be patient. If you're struggling in the business side, don't go find clients. Go build relationships.
Amen.
Go out and build the relationships with other business owners. The same people that are struggling with you in your detail business, it's the same coffee shop that's struggling trying to get people in to get coffee. Because guess what? It's so easy to make coffee at home than to go down the street and support that local business.
It's a great way to look at it. It's pretty easy to wash your car at home, but I make coffee here, but that's a great analogy, is make it to where they want to come to you. Make it where it's something enjoyable. I love it. Well, hey, thanks for opening up. I know a lot of people that have served, I won't say don't like to share, but it's not easy. And, I appreciate you for what you've done. I can't imagine what your journey's been like, but then again, I look at other people that have struggled through business, and I can't imagine what everybody's journey is different, right? Because the structure of our youth, the structure of of what we're exposed to, of how we view things, who we surround ourselves with, it all creates different struggles for each and every one of us. And I was told this one time: I've got a really good first sergeant that's, he's one of my best friends. He's been a mentor and coach to me both in life and in the guard. And it's funny because people will say, you know what, it's leadership, I outrank him, but I don't, because when it comes to it, I go to him for advice because he sees things as a senior NCO that I don't even get eyes on. Right. And I value his perspective. And the same in business. We've got young people that view things differently, and I just honor their views, and you're definitely one of them. So I think this was cool. I hope that everybody got something out of it, and we'll be all seeing you. Just a reminder, a plug. Hey, share this if you've enjoyed it. We want to thank P&S for making it happen, Dynabraid for making it happen, Chris for orchestrating it, Oscar for being here. Buff and Shine, you're always a great partner. Come to our party Wednesday night, SEMA. Go get your tickets, absolutely free. We're going to earn some. We're going to go out and raise some serious money. Matter of fact, I woke up at 5 something this morning and was like, I ain't going back to sleep. So I just started thinking about how we can impact lives at SEMA. So I came up with some new ideas. I'll put to paper today, and we'll go from there. There's Chris just brought it up, 10th annual gathering of detailing professionals. And we're going to have a good time. We're going to have a great time. And it's always fun to see so many friends, and we just can't wait to have you there. So,
hey, and do me a favor, guys, if you're watching this, go out and find some of our social media posts promoting this event and share it for us, please. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. And again, we're not doing this for profit. We're doing this to we've got SEMA Cares, which is going to benefit 3 nonprofits that are all aimed at helping children. And so we take 100%. Last year, Diane and I rounded off the donation to get it up higher. And so we don't make a single dime on this. We invest just like you do in it. And
the whole purpose is to do something fun as an industry and make a difference at the same time.
Absolutely. So, all right, Oscar, thanks a ton for being on, and go to the gym. I'm going to go work out right now. Go change real quick, work out. We'll talk to you all on the backside. Everybody have a good week. The rest of the week, we'll see you at SEMA. We're only a couple weeks out. Not even that. See you all.
Sounds good, guys. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
See you guys.